Welcome to Zilog and Moto. Sorry, I just wanted to put a little energy out there. I know sometimes these intros can get a little dull. I wanted to throw a little spice into it today. Try to give it a little flavor. Because we have a tasty game today. One probably most of you have heard of, and if not, I think you'll enjoy. Anyway, today we're talking about Road Rash, the seminal motorcycle / combat racing game that spawned two direct sequels on the Genesis and an indirect take on the genre in Skitchin, a port of the original game on the Sega CD, PlayStation, 3DS, Saturn, and other systems, and then later titles on the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64. Unfortunately, in recent years, the series has been dormant, primarily due to later titles in the series being subpar and never quite recapturing the magic of the 16-bit era. And I think that's a testament to how good those original games were. So what exactly is Road Rash? Well, in a literal sense, road rash is a term for what happens when you take a spill off your bike, and the corresponding scabs that form after taking bumps and bruises across the pavement. However, from the perspective of the video game, Road Rash is a motorcycle racing game that takes something like Super Hang-On, and adds two important elements, combat and commerce. Hopefully you're not a pacifist, because if you think you're making it through this game without taking a few swings at the competition, or running them into oncoming traffic, well, I got some bad news for you, as you'll probably be dumped into said oncoming traffic, or perhaps a tree or cow yourself. And those bike repair bills, when you aren't finishing in the prize money, are not pretty. Is Road Rash perfect? Nah, not quite, but it does have some really fun aspects, and some potentially controller damaging ones as well. Let's take a closer look. So, as you can see from the case, we finally have a quote-unquote normal case for an Electronic Arts game. No cardboard box, no wide plastic box. This came out in late '91, so Electronic Arts had finally gotten with the program and figured out that maybe it would benefit them to release games in boxes that look like everyone else on the console, and that didn't cause issues with durability or shelf space. This copy's in decent shape. Probably could clean it up a little bit as far as the dust goes. No hang tab, unfortunately. But if you look at the back, there is a slight distortion in the plastic here. Don't know what caused that. I have no idea. Other than that, everything's intact. The inside looks good. Some good quality screenshots here on the back. If you remember a few episodes ago, I was complaining about how the screenshots on the back of Cliffhanger looked terrible and cheap, and in an era when graphics were king, that just seemed like a huge misstep. Not unlike the rest of the game. But in this case, EA put plenty of high quality pictures here. And I guarantee this game sold more than a few copies simply because it looked cool. As you look down here at the bottom, it shows one or two players, and we'll get to that later. What I have to say for now is while this game does have a two-player mode, unlike Cliffhanger's hidden one, only obtainable by entering a cheat code, it's questionable at best, but at least this marking isn't out-and-out deceptive. And we look back at the front. At first you might think there's a black Sharpie mark right in the middle, but if you look closer, it's actually not. It's made to look like a bike's skid mark, which actually I'd never noticed until doing this review, so I think that's kind of a nice touch. Inside, we've got the usual EA yellow tab cartridge and the manual. You can tell the manual has seen better days. No torn pages or anything, but it does seem like it was a little bit maybe water damaged or something at some point, or at the very least kept in a humid area. The manual does a good job of giving backstory to the game. You know, right here, the history of the Rash. It explains how to play the game. Let's see, the different bikes, all the different bikes here. the roads, various things to avoid, the cops, and then the other rashers that you're going to race against. It even has spaces for writing down passwords and keeping up with high scores. So it's about all you could ask for in a manual, aside from perhaps being in color. But of course, that just simply wasn't done on Sega systems, unfortunately. So we've got a pretty good package here. Let's take a look at the actual game and see what we got. Okay, so first off, let's discuss the basic structure of the game. The game isn't very deep in concept. Your goal, as Road Rasher, is to race against 14 other opponents on 5 courses in an effort to earn money that can be used to purchase faster bikes. This, in turn, leads to racing on longer versions of the 5 courses against faster opponents for more money to purchase even faster implements of speed, and so on, until you've completed all 5 levels of each of the 5 race courses. Seems simple enough, right? Well, it is in theory. But between the increasingly difficult turns and obstacles on each course, and competitors that would take your head off with a club as much as look at you, including cops, the game can go from a breeze to challenging very quickly. Every rasher starts out with the same bike, the Shuriken 400. The bike is decent enough, and seems well balanced in turns, but it's definitely not very fast. It's good enough to win all the level 1 races, and be competitive at level 2, but by level 3, you'll be forced to purchase something with a bit more oomph, if you want to have any hope of cracking the top 7. For those of you that have played Mario Kart, think of the Shuriken like the 50cc class of karts. It'll get you down the track, but your top speed is at a level where most drivers are going to be able to stay out of trouble relatively easily. To progress through the game, you have to purchase new bikes, probably at least 2 or 3, to be able to compete at the top levels. There are 8 bikes in the game to choose from, and I do mean choose. Purchase the wrong bike for your playing style, and you may well be going back to a previous save point to try again, or continue to earn money to buy a better one. Technically, purchasing the wrong bike isn't a game-ending event, as any bike that you purchase has trade-in value towards another one, but it may be very difficult to not crash and lose money, or finish in a high enough position to actually earn any money worth speaking of. To address the subject of game saves, Road Rash unfortunately does not support battery backup. Instead, it relies on a 20-digit password scheme. The passwords save your progress through the levels, and the current finishes that you've recorded on the 5 tracks, and your bike choice and amount of money. There's also a high score screen which you can aspire to appear on, which relates back to the amount of money you've earned. And to top that list will likely take more than a few play sessions, just due to the amount of time races take when you get to the higher levels. You can also name your character while you're playing, but that aspect is not saved as part of the password function. So if you want to utilize that feature, you'll have to re-enter your name along with your password every time you reboot. Playing through the game is not a simple matter of racing from point A to point B in tracks of ever-increasing length. While that's probably, 80% of the game, this doesn't take into effect how you actually get from point A to point B, which will more than likely involve lots of banging, kicking, and punching. And here's what makes Road Rash truly unique. All 5 Road Rash tracks take place on long and winding city roads, which means that not only will you have to either slip past or fight the other 14 opponents in your race, you'll have to avoid traffic traveling both your way and oncoming, deer, cows, oil spills, and cross traffic at occasional intersections, to say nothing of the trees and other hazards if you manage to stray from the road too far on turns. Every time you either wreck or are beaten to a pulp by a fellow rasher, you'll fall or get thrown off your bike, and depending on the speed of the wreck and what you get hit or got hit by, you may be in for a long jog back to your bike. And be careful when heading back to your bike, as if you're running on the road, you'll fair game to be overrun by a competitor, delaying you yet another 5 seconds or so from getting back. Of course, you can do the same to your opponents, and there's something very satisfying about seeing your bike bump up in the air after hitting them, so I can't be mad at this mechanic at all. The beaten to a pulp aspect involves your character's health,
which is impacted when you have a bike wreck or when other rashers punch or hit you with clubs. Clubs can definitely wear you out very quickly, so if you're racing near a rasher with one, either steal it, avoid them, or do your best to take them out before they get you. Police officers, which I really hadn't mentioned much yet, also participate in this, and when you run into them a few times during the race, they'll try to take you out as well to arrest you. The police bikes are very heavy, so fight them at your own risk. I personally just try to sneak past them whenever possible and not engage, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting halfway through a race, or more, and ending up with a huge fine rather than winning money. Luckily, as part of your heads-up display when racing, there's a portion that reflects your nearest competitor or cop, and it very helpfully gives the name of the person and their current health, so you know if you're in a patrolled area and should exercise some extra caution, or if you're about to tangle with a specific rival. The entire heads-up display is very nice, and gives you not only the competitor information, but your own health, your bike's health, your speed, your RPM, what position you're in, the amount of time you spent racing, and the distance traveled, so that you know how close or far away you are from the finish line. There's even two small windows that simulate what the rear view mirrors on the bike would show, giving you an idea of just how close the other rashers are to you, or if you're leaving them in the dust. This aspect of the game is done pretty perfectly, and I can't think of a thing about it I would change, as usually in games like this, the issue is with too little information given to the driver, rather than enough and too much. In one of the earlier reviews here on Zilog and Moto, I complained a bit about the music used in the early Electronic Arts games. I think it was the Bill Walsh review, and I referred to the Road Rash as a reference, as I'd remembered not liking the music in the game. However, in another previous review, this time for Lakers vs. Celtics, I commented on how good the music was, and referenced how it was due to the contributions from Rob Hubbard. Well, Rob Hubbard worked on the music Road Rash in some capacity, as even though it doesn't appear the team's picture on the backside of the manual, it does list him in the credits along with Michael Barlow. Well, upon playing the game again, I can say that I was wrong to complain about the game's music previously, at least somewhat. And all I can figure is that more than likely I enjoy the Hubbard portions and not the Barlow portions, but obviously without knowing what each person did, that's hard to say. What I can say though is that all of the rhythms and supporting instrumentation in the game are solid to very good. It's just some of the overlaying synths can be a bit grating, which I think is what I remember as not sounding so good. However, it's never to the point of wanting to turn the music off, which is included as an option if it really just doesn't agree with you or you simply want to supply your own soundtrack. It seems like most of the audio effort in the game was put toward the music rather than effects, because there's simply not that many sound effects in the game. Bikes don't produce engine noise, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Instead, they only produce the occasional tire squeal or scrape of the bike as it slides across the pavement. You get a few grunts as you fight with other bikers, a yelp of pain if you crash into an oncoming vehicle head-on, and a Daniel Bryan-esque "yes, yes, yes" when you finish a race in the top 4 to qualify for advancement to the next level. But that's about it. Also, none of the effects sound very good, with some being better than others, but most just being a muddy mess. It's a bit strange how good the music is for the most part and how bad the sound effects are. My guess is that the effects just must have been more of an afterthought, which is unfortunate. The graphics in the game are a mixed bag. The game features the occasional quote from a fellow rasher or cop with a portrait of said rasher or cop, and they have a nice, unique, cartoonish style to them. The bikes in the bike store are detailed and colorful. In every race after completion, there are other portraits showing the rashers hanging out and relaxing in various places. And as already stated, your bike's HUD is very detailed and full of valuable information. However, when it comes time to actually race your bikes down the track, there are some definite issues. The camera angle used is slightly above and behind your bike in a pretty common racing game configuration, and this works well for the most part. But, and I don't know if it's because of the engine having to keep up with all the background course details and other vehicles, along with both rear view mirror displays, the frame rate in the game is not great. It's not hard driving, bad, mind you, but it certainly isn't smooth, and that can cause oncoming traffic or other road hazards to sometimes seemingly appear out of thin air, which can be incredibly frustrating late in races when you think you got a clear shot to the end, only to wreck and lose 5 spots in the standings with no chance to make them up. Also, some of the sprites and other background details are just butt ugly. Cacti resemble cacti, and the same for trees when you're in motion. But hit one and take a closer look as you're running back to your bike, and you'll see how pixely they are. Same goes for various houses and buildings you drive past. Anytime you're on foot or pause the game to take a closer look, you'll probably wish you hadn't. For the most part, the less than stellar graphics don't affect the gameplay, but there are definite times when the lack of animation makes things much more difficult than they probably should have. Even with the issues with the graphics and sound effects, I'm going to go ahead and give Road Rash 4 stars. When I first started to think about reviewing the game, I was planning on only giving out 3-star rating, especially with both Road Rash 2 and 3 still to come, just to reflect the improvement of the later games. But when you consider that this game came out in 1991, the amount of originality in the title, and the addictiveness of gameplay in a relatively simple game, well, sometimes you nail it the first time out. While it certainly has room for improvement that I believe we'll see in the sequels, there's no denying that this is a solid title that should have a place in any Genesis library.
And there you have it. The first game in a series I've definitely spent some quality time with over the years. There's not a whole lot of series of games out there where I've legitimately beaten 4 games in the series multiple times. But this is one of them. If you're a Genesis fan, I definitely think that this is one you should have in your collection, as it's relatively common and inexpensive, but also provides a great play experience. It's not going to blow anyone away graphically, but in 2019, what really does from the 16-bit era? A game being fun and somewhat challenging without being too hard or what make the games that stand the test of time. And this title hits both of those marks. Where are we going next? Well, I think we still got at least another week until the Stanley Cup Finals hit, so no hockey. But other than that, I hadn't really decided yet. I guess it'll be a surprise for everyone. So until next time, remember, whatever you play, have fun, and be excellent to each other. Later.